Hello there, amazing and wonderful geeky people of YouTube. So today this is going to be, as you guys can see, a talking head video. So I will basically just talk, so there will not be any fancy dancy things on this overlay other than my ugly face and some laundry in the background in my backpack and a broom. But anyway, let's get into this. I want to talk to you guys about when should you switch from Windows to Linux, because there's a lot of people out there that are talking about it and thinking about doing it. And I think a lot of people are just basically of this mindset that just do it. Oh, you can definitely do it, and oh, it's no problem, and yeah, you should do it because Linux is so fucking amazing and it's open source and it's way more stable than Windows and all that. That's true, but I kind of have a little bit of a different approach to it. I have an itchy nose. So I have a little note here on my screen, so on this side here. I will be looking over here a little bit, but yeah, let's get into it. So the first point, or the first thing that I asked myself back then, and you should ask yourself, is that are there alternative for the programs I use? So if you're using Microsoft Word, is there an alternative? Yep, there is LibreOffice and other office suites. Am I using some other programs? Like, am I using a CAD program daily? Am I using a editing program? Am I using a management program? You know, just the things that you cannot live without. Are there alternatives on Linux that you can use, or do they have a port of that on Linux? If that's so, and you're willing to learn the alternative, that's a checkbox. But let's say there is a program that, okay, I cannot live without this program. It could be like a management program, it could be for business or stuff like that. You kind of have to be like, okay, I can dual boot and then boot into Windows every time I have to use that program. Or I can put it on a Windows on a virtual machine and use the program. As boot up the virtual machine with Windows in it and then use the program. Or I could just stick with program. And a lot of people, a lot of people, they don't want to mess around with virtual machines and dual booting because they just can't handle that shit. So I would say, if you have a program that you're really depending on, that you cannot find an alternative on Linux, or if there's an alternative that don't do what you needed it to do, stick with Windows until that comes, and then have like Linux on a laptop or something like that. Here's the next one. Are you using services that don't work on Linux? Are you using, like Spotify back in the day didn't work on Linux? And do you have some other services in the cloud, or services at home on your, do you have a server that have some services that don't work on Linux, or they don't work as well on Linux, or they are really hard to get to work on Linux? Also, like Google Drive was a really big problem some years ago. Now I just I activated Google on my phone, the voice recognition shit. But anyway, there's stuff like that. Like, I remember Google Drive was a really big thing, and I was a really heavy Google Drive user back in the day, and then I was a Microsoft One user, and all these protocols didn't work under Linux, so I didn't have an online backup. So are there things like that you just need to use, or are using, that you cannot get to work under Linux, or they only work, some of them only work? And again, are there alternatives to them that you want to migrate to? And if there is that, like, you say, okay, I just need this cloud software, or I need this for my business, or for myself, or for my family, or for my phone, or my Xbox and stuff like that, you should not go and install Linux, basically, because then you will have problems. Again, you could install Windows on a virtual machine and use it there, or you could dual boot. But again, I'm taking this from a guy that wants to just get rid of Windows. So if you don't have any program or services that is Windows only, or you have and if you don't have services that you're depending on, or you're like, oh well, I can use Google YouTube Music instead of Spotify, or Google Music instead of Spotify, or some other music client, and you're fine with that, no problem. Okay, here's the next one. Are there other people using your PC? That's also a big one that a lot of people tend to forget. Like, is this the only PC in your family, and your kids and your wife, spouse, mother, brother, is your whole family or other people, if you have roommates, are they also using that PC, and are they willing to learn Linux? If not, stick with Windows, because it's a big hassle. And then again, you cannot, or not again, but here you cannot do the virtual machine. You can do the dual booting, so when they log on, they can do boot into Windows. But then if you are on the PC and they come on, they want to log into their account, you're like, oh, wait a minute, we just have to reboot instead of just logging in and out. So it just becomes, go away, you stupid fly. So it just becomes a really, really big hassle. So if other people are using the PC, other than you, of course, and they are not willing to learn Linux or go into the Linux world, stick with Windows and then get a secondary laptop or a refurbished PC or something like that you can mess around with Linux with. And I know a lot of also Linux people say, oh, just force them into it and then they will learn by doing. And that's not how the world works. We should never force people to do shit. It's a bad thing. It's a dictatorship then. And you have to think about other people if you're living with other people. And a lot of Linux people don't think about other people other than their own little fucking ass. Think about other people. Are they willing? Can they learn? Or take it up with the family over, lunch or something like that and be like, hey, yo, I'm thinking about this Linux thing. It will save us some money, and those money we can use them for like a trip for the family or something like that. Are you guys okay with that if I use Linux and we then save money on programs and licenses and all that down the line, and we can spend that on, like I said, a trip or time out in the movies or something like that? I know it don't work totally like that, but you could just say it like that. And if they say, yeah, let's just do that, you can do it, but if just one have a problem with it or something like that, I will just wait. Here's another thing. Can you use it at work? And I mean, the alternatives you find on Linux, and can you use those alternatives at work? Can you use your Linux machine at work? And again, a lot of Linux people out there will say, oh, of course you can, because there's Samba and there's like Apple Talk and there's alternative screen viewer clients and all that. Here's another problem. You cannot just take your laptop with you to work or your PC or remotely telephone to your company with your PC and be like, well, I'm using Linux, you should not care. A lot of companies, for security reasons and other reasons or licensing reasons, have set parameters or set rules to say, okay, you can only use Windows XP. There are some companies out there, or Windows 7, and you have to use TeamViewer. Because that's been certified, it's been, locked down, it's working with our servers and all that, and I actually do think you can get TeamViewer for Linux. But just the fact that you're logging into their network, they can be like, well, we don't want other operating systems than Windows on our network. Again, for some security reasons, some patch reasons, and stuff like that. There are some companies that have, like I said, license agreements, or they have like an infrastructure that say we only allow Windows computers. I have worked at a company. I was like I repaired like high-end machines that were building basically the wings you see on windmills. And I had my own laptop because there was a lot of PLC programming and shit like that we had to do and check and all that. And the programs that PC had was things you could do in Linux and all that. And I was like I was also in conjunction with the service team. And that company was not a big company, so they spent a lot of money on licensing. And I was like, why don't you guys just use Linux? Because we can get this to work on Linux and blah, blah, blah and all that. And they were just like, our network is set up to use Windows 7, I think it was back then. Everything is integrated into the Windows world with Windows 7. So yeah, you could technically put in your Linux machine, but then our service contractors and our security contractors would not guarantee the security, even though we say that Linux is more secure than Linux. That Linux is more secure than Windows. But if those two talk together, you get other security problems. And if their network is certified, and that's a big thing in the corporate world, it's certified. If that's certified to work with Windows machines, that's what they want. That's what they paid like a 10-year contract on. So you just have to go with it, even though you can say, why the fuck are you not using Linux? So you have to agree with that. If that's the case, keep your Windows machine. And here's another thing. Do your hardware work on Linux? And a lot of you guys will say, well, yeah, everything works. Well, I have, you see here my dirty mouse. I have LEDs on this one. I have LEDs on my keyboard. I have LEDs in my RAM. Some would work under Linux. My RAM and my motherboard that have LEDs on it, that don't work under Linux. I have to go into Windows, set the color scheme I want, save it to kind of like a BIOS buffer or something like that, and then I can boot into Linux and it remember it. But let's say it crashes or the BIOS or the memory for that settings get flushed by a hard reboot or something like that where I don't save it. I have to go into Windows and do it again. because it's using software that talks with the motherboard and the RAM, and it's a proprietary software and blah 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 blah. I have not tried it in a virtual machine, but that's just the case. I don't know if it works on a virtual machine, but that's the case here, that I need to go into Windows to change the color scheme of all my LED devices. My keyboard has its own little thing. I don't need software to control my keyboard. If that's the case, that you only have like a mouse and a keyboard and you can control everything in hardware, meaning you can control your keyboard sliding via the keyboard, or even your motherboards and all that, which I don't think you can, or you're just satisfied with having this pukey color scheme of LEDs going, the pukey rainbow, what they call it, where just get all the colors of the rainbow going up and down and all that shit. If you're happy with that, yes. But for some people that like aesthetic and all that, they want to have control over that. And if you're fine with that you don't have control over it, yes, you can use Linux. But like I said, if some software for your mouse don't work, like I had a Razer mouse, and if I want to change like some settings, like remap the buttons and all that, I had to go into Windows to do it, because I couldn't get it to work on the Linux via emulators or anything like that, and I couldn't get it to work on virtual machines. So if you have stuff like that you're dependent on, and it don't work on the Linux, or you're losing a lot of performance on the Linux and all that, stay with Windows. It could be a capture card that only it will only capture in 720p on the Linux, but in Windows it can capture in 1080p. That had been a problem in the past. You have to think about all that. But if you don't have anything hardware-wise that you can say, okay, I'm okay with losing 5% performance, or I'm okay that I can't change my color scheme on my mouse or something like that. I don't really care about that, or I can't set the colors on my RAM LEDs or my motherboard LEDs. If you're okay with that, yeah, use Linux. But most people that buy those kind of things, they kind of want the control over it to do those things. So yeah, again, if you have something hardware-wise that you're okay with losing some functionality of it, switch to Linux. If not, stay under Windows until you research and you find out that it works. Here's another one. Do you have the time to learn new programs and new UIs and new work paradigms? That's also a thing you have to think about. A lot of people, again, they say everyone can switch to Linux and all that. Yeah, technically they can. It's just like installing Linux and then go on with it. But a lot of people don't have the time or the patience to sit down and figure out, okay, this is how Ubuntu works compared to Linux, or this is how Fedora works compared to Linux, or this is how CentOS works compared to Windows, They don't have that time. They rather spend that time with their family, their dogs, chasing aliens, finding out if Bigfoot is living in the garden or something like that. They just have other hobbies and rather spend their time on other things. If you're one of those that are like, oh man, I have to spend at least a month to get comfortable with that, and let's say like 30 minutes a day or an hour a day getting comfortable. And if you don't want to spend that time, stay on Windows. And I know a lot of you guys out there will say, oh, it's not that hard to learn Linux and all that shit and getting used to new UI changes. No, it's not that hard for you. But you don't know how your neighbor thinks. You don't know how hard it will be for your brother or your spouse or your kids. Because we all have different things that interest us. If you're not interested in learning in computers, you're not interested in learning new UIs. You just want Windows or your computer basically to look the same as it always do. That's why you see a lot of fucking people complain about Windows when they're changing UI settings or UI interface choices from updates to updates or from version to version. A lot of people just I'm just staying on the later version because I know how it works, I know where all the buttons are, I don't have to, learn a lot of things. Windows 8, when they had that Metro UI, it was a mess for a lot of people. They bitched and moaned about it. And that's kind of the same thing when you're asking a Windows user to go to Linux, is that think about how the computer world screamed from going from Windows 7 to 8 because of the Metro UI. Think about that. And going from Windows 7 to the Metro UI, or going from Windows 10 to Linux, is kind of like the same paradigm shift. Here's another thing that a lot of fucking Linux people that tell people to switch to Linux tend to forget to talk about. Do you have a support network? If you're asking someone to switch to Linux, have you set in place and motion places and people or services where they can get help, because they will need help? Are you thinking about switching to Linux? Have you figured out where can I get help? So if you're using Ubuntu, do you know where to get help on Ubuntu? If you're choosing Mint, do you know where to get help from Mint if you have a problem? If you're using Debian, or you want to change to Debian, do you know what forums to go to, where to go and get help? You need to think about that. You need to figure that out before you do the change. A lot of people, they either just jump out into it and don't think about this, the net, the support network and where they can get help. That's fine if that's what you want. But again, for a lot of people, they want it to be as easy as possible, and then they get a problem, and they're like, where the fuck do I ask for help? And then they type in Linux help with network. The search results comes up with Ubuntu, Fedora, Gentoo, Arch, and they're like, holy fucking shit. They just thought that Linux was Linux or Ubuntu was just all the distribution, and then they get confused. Yeah, they may know they're using Ubuntu or Mint, but then they see the Arch or something like, well, can I use this one? Or, it just gets confusing for them, and we need to acknowledge that. Do you have a support network? What I recommend you do before you switch to Linux is to figure out what distribution you want to use, and then sit down and figure out, maybe take a piece of paper and then write down places where you can get help. Are there a friend you can call? Or, I can use these forums, I have these Wikipedias I can get help on. So you are prepared for the time when you have problems. So that's a really, really big part that I think a lot of people also tend to forget. And here's another one, this is really, really important. Take backups of your most important files before you start to format your fucking hard drive and all that. A lot of people, and also a lot of people when they're upgrading from version to version on Linux and on fucking Windows, they forget to do a backup before they do a big upgrade. And then they lose some files. So if you have like your documents folder or your family pictures or, the pictures from the SM club that you went to last night, put them on a separate hard drive or on a flash drive and all that, and then do the upgrade. And if you don't lose them, you can just format your hard drive and delete the folder on your spare flash drive. Or if something goes tits up, you have a backup of your important files, your family photos, your sex videos and all that shit. So that's really, really also important. Here's another thing that kind of sums it all up. If let's say you're ticked off all of these, that you have alternative, you don't have any services that do not work on Linux or you can't live with. I forgot this one also. Can I play the games I want on Linux? That's self-explanatory. Can I play them under Steam or under Proton on Steam? If you can, yes. If not, click on Windows. I forgot that one. Okay, so you can tick off alternatives. Yeah, that's fine. Services, nope, there's no services that are Windows dependent. I can play the games I want. I'm the only one using the computer. All my hardware would work. I have time to learn and research. I have a support network. I figured out how to get help and all that. I have taken backup of my files. And then sit down, take a break, wait a day, wait a half day, wait an hour, and then really, really think, are there other reasons for me to change? Like, are there other reasons I need to stay under Windows? Like I said, do my work demand it? Do the school demand that I use Microsoft Office for my files? Do work demands that when I'm sending them files like CAT files or other stuff, that it has to be on a format, on a program that only works under Linux? Under Windows. Am I willing to have like a virtual machine with Windows on it? Or do I want to do it? Like all these things, think about, just rethink an extra time. It's always good when you're making these big changes to sit down and rethink. Because going from one operating system to the another, it's really, really important to sit and rethink. I had to do the same thing when I used Mac like 10 years ago or something like that. I had Mac for like 5 years. I wanted an iMac. I always wanted to be a Mac person because I want to see how that world was. It took me 1.5 years before I actually bought a Mac because I was like, is this something I really, really want? Because I had only money enough to buy a Mac. I didn't have a PC because it was, I did have a PC, but it was so old and broken that it almost did not work. So I was like, I can buy a PC and then continue my PC world and all that. Or I can go over to the Mac world and try that out. Was I willing to do that? I have to save up a little bit of money. Either way, what I did. So like I said, that was like 6 months of the journey. But before I actually, click the buy button on the website, on Mac's websites, I sat for like 3 hours thinking about, should I do this or should I get a gaming machine and stuff like that? And I was like, I don't game so much more. I didn't game so much at that time. And I didn't do like videos like this. And I had, basically I didn't have anything that I could not do on a Mac. Like I could go on Facebook, I could play solitaire, stuff like that. There was no reason for me to stay on Windows, meaning that I had no reason to not try Macintosh. But again, I sit for like 3 hours and just was like, I can get this PC and blah blah blah. But I was like, oh no, I really really want to try out being a Mac person. So I did that. I used to kind of do the same. Said like, have I thought this through? Is there anything else out there that that hinder me to do it, or is this something I really really want? Because sometimes you can check all the boxes, but you could be like, I don't really want to do it because I'm just happy where I am. I'm good with what I'm using. I like Windows. There's no reason for me to change other than security, a little bit more proprietary versus open source, telemetry and all that, but I'm happy with Windows. I don't give a fuck about all that. Well, then stay on Windows. If you're like, there's nothing that holding me on Windows. There's nothing that Linux can't do that Windows can do for me. So I have no reason to not change. Well, then change. So rethink it just the last time. And then the last point: read, think, and learn. And by that I mean, don't be scared if you get into a problem, because you will at some point get into a problem, or there will be something that's so new to you that you need to look it up on Google or something like that. So go and search it, read it, think, maybe read it again, and then learn from it, because using Linux is a learning experience. Changing from Mac to Windows is a learning experience. Changing from Windows to Mac is a learning experience. Changing from Mac or Windows to Linux is a bigger learning experience. It's a whole new philosophy of life for a lot of people. It's a whole new paradigm you have to think about. So you have to kind of like be willing to learn and use time on reading, talking to people, watching videos. And if that's not you, like I said, if you're just a guy or a girl that wants to come home, push the power button, and then you can go on Facebook and look at cat pictures, or go on Twitter and yell at some political idiot, then Linux is not for you. Yes, you can do those things, but at some point you may have to learn some things. And if you don't want to do that, there are people out there that don't want to learn new stuff. My brother's one of them. If he's buying, let's say he's buying this deodorant here, and they change the fucking sticker here, he will not buy it because, well, if they change this, they may as well change things inside, so it's not the same thing anymore. I don't give a fuck. I want to. Then he finds something new that he's known like for the last 5 years. He's really conservative when it comes to that. And I dated a girl that was like that. I bought home a bag of coffee, and they changed the color scheme. And she was like, "It's not the same coffee. It's the same fucking. No, it's not the same coffee. If they changed the color scheme, they probably also changed the blend. So I had to go down and buy another coffee. Well, I know this brand of coffee has been the same for the last 20 years. There's some people that just are like that. They don't want to learn new things. They just want something of their life to be structured and to be like it always have been. Anyway, I'm out of here. I hope this helped. If you guys want this checklist, like I could put it up on a Google Doc or something like that, or I could put it down in the description. If you want that, just let me know and I will do those things. But I think this is like a really, really good and a little bit of not conservative, but a little bit of like you rethink your choices. It's a really good way to get either people over to Linux or to get yourself over to Linux. So you don't just jump into it and then you have like a shite load of problems and you have a lot of questions and you get a bad experience. Anyway, thanks for watching. It's been a long one, but I hope this helped you guys out a little bit. I'll see you all later. Bye bye.